What you need to know today begins at the epicenter of the National Football League. And last week, there was so much stirred up in Indianapolis Scouting Combine about the future of Tom Brady. And everybody who's in this business, I mean, let's peel back the curtain for a second. Everybody who's in the business of covering the NFL wants to be ahead of the curve on Tom Brady. It created a feeding frenzy last week. It created a circular firing squad last week. There was resentment. There was acrimony. There's jealousy. There's this. There's that. Everybody wants to be one step ahead of where this Tom Brady story is going, and that has resulted in plenty of people reporting that he's going out of New England. Our good friend Tom Curran of NBC Sports Boston has tried to apply some rationality and sanity to the situation. He has an item that you can find at the NBC Sports Boston website. We've written something about it at ProFootballTalk.com as well. Tom Brady, Patriots, Chris Simms, not as inevitable that it's going to be a divorce as some seem. That doesn't mean he's staying, but it's not like he's got a bag packed and one foot out the door and the other one off the ground. And there was a sense last week that that's where it's heading.
Yeah,
There's
right.
still a chance that, when it's time for him to get down to business with the Patriots, he's going to realize, I've been here half my life.
Yes.
It is a big deal to uproot everything I know, everything I've done, everything about my routine year in and year out, and go somewhere else where I have no idea what it's going to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that would be the first thing I would think of. I mean, first off, we're in unprecedented, waters here, area. I mean, it just Tom Brady, greatest of all time. What? He's not back with the Patriots. I mean, it is crazy. And I think you're right. Everybody at the Combine is so anxious to get an answer, get a feel here. There's a lot of interesting things to kind of unpack here. I mean, yeah, okay, it does seem like New England is willing to let him go out there and test the market. I get that. Yes, all that. Also, I don't know how many teams that are out there in the quarterback market definitely want Tom Brady. Right now, I mean, I feel like the only two teams we can really say, okay, the Tennessee Titans, maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, from what we heard Bruce Arians say. I mean, I all know we have this wishful thinking with the 49ers, and, I see Peter's column yesterday and what you write. So, okay, maybe, I don't know about that. So that's the other interesting aspect of this whole thing, because there are some teams that are quarterback needy this year. But do you really want a 43-year-old at this point of his career and then know you're going to be back in the same boat of needing a quarterback maybe a year or two from now? That's where I go on the radio and talk to people, Mike. I just still stay. I think it's 55-45, 60-40 that Brady ends back up in New England. This is my biggest reason. You go somewhere else, and it will be the hardest offseason in Tom Brady's career since his rookie year. And does he really want to go through that? Does he really want to go somewhere and, like you said, carve out his new path with a new franchise, move his family, okay? Then deep dive into a playbook and probably have to learn a new language that he's never had to deal with, and then really learn it to where he could be Tom Brady like he's been with the Patriots. Those are some really tough challenges. Those are life-changing challenges. It would be a grueling work, moving your family, unknown territory as far as the team's concerned. And I always just say, why? Again, I don't want to see Tom Brady in anything but a Patriots uniform. I want to go, why? He's still good. And I think that he can still lead them to a Super Bowl. And I think that they'll get weapons around him this year to help him out.
Yeah, I think about that reality. New team, new city, new teammates, new coaching staff, new offense, new everything. The stress of moving your family on top of it.
Right.
And the idea that was floated by Tom Curran a week or two ago, and I'm not saying this is incorrect. I'm willing to accept Tom Curran's report completely, that Tom Brady is considering having the interested teams come to him. If I'm Tom Brady, don't I want to go there? Don't I want to see what it feels like to walk into a new facility? Don't I want, when you shop for houses.
Yeah, right.
You know when you walk through the door whether or not you want to live there or not. Can I envision myself being here? Can I envision myself working here? What's the locker room look like? What's the training room look like? What does it all feel like? Because the last thing you want, Chris, and I went through this more times in my life than I'll care to admit, the last thing you want to do is pull your car into the parking spot at your new place of employment, look up at the doors, and say, what in the hell have I done? And at that point, it's too late to undo it. So I don't know about this idea of Tom Brady sitting on a throne where one team comes in after another and makes their pitch. I want to go to this facility and that facility and that facility. And the other thing to keep in mind, we have to be considering the reality that not every team that's interested in Tom Brady is going to be willing to wait for that to play out.
Sure.
This is the time of year where the teams say, we got to know what you want to do, because if you don't want this offer, we're moving on to the next guy and the next guy until we find the guy that wants to play here. How many teams are going to be willing to defer to Tom Brady taking a week or so to figure out what he wants to do?
I think you're right. It's very dicey. It's a very real part of this situation. You know, and again, it's not like we're talking about Tom Brady, who's 32 years old and he's in the prime of his career, and you're going, okay, we'll wait because we might get you for 8 or 10 more years or something like that in free agency. We're talking about waiting for a guy when there's a lot of other options that are out there that are maybe better or not, you know, a little less than, okay, but in the general vicinity to where, yeah, are you going to sit there and wait for Brady if he needs 10 extra days to mull over a decision? You know, yes, I think that is dangerous for teams, and they're going to have to weigh their options there. You know, the other thing, too, you look at is, you know, when you go to New England with Brady, too, I'll bring this up one more time. Josh McDaniels being back, I think that's huge. I think people are making a bigger deal about the fact that New England hasn't talked to Tom Brady yet. Yeah, you know, that's not the way Belichick is. I think that when things come to a pinnacle here and it's getting close to the start of free agency and Brady's got a real feel for what he might get on the open market or what situations are out there, I think New England will then call and be like, hey, Tom, we want you back. You know, we had to mull over some things. We never denied we didn't want you back. You know, I think there's the price, the situation, everything's got to be right there. And I think ultimately that's what will happen. They'll end up being back together. I just don't see Brady doing it all. You know, I don't.
Chris,
yeah.
I would not be shocked, and I think some of this comes through in Tom Curran's column. I wouldn't be shocked to find out that the Patriots have already made those communications with Tom Brady, that there have been text messages sent, that Brady knows the Patriots want him. The question is, what will ultimately be the terms? The one thing from last week that I thought was a little bit on the bogus side, the idea that the two sides didn't meet at the scouting combine because until we know what's going to happen with the collective bargaining agreement, there's no reason to meet because they don't know how the deal could be structured. Look, there's two options. What the deal would be if there is a new CBA, what the deal would be if there isn't. It's not like an entire menu of potential contracts that you have to negotiate. And you know what you can structure and what you can afford to pay if there isn't a new CBA, and you know how you structure it and what you can afford to pay if there is. I mean, you think these other teams that are interested in Tom Brady said last week, well, we'd love to meet with Don Yee, but we can't do it until we know what the new CBA is going to be. I mean, that was bogus on its face.
Totally.
They didn't need to meet last week. Last week was about Tom Brady finding out who else is interested so that now, this week and next week, at some point, there can be a meaningful conversation with the Patriots regarding what's behind door number 1, because he already has a pretty good idea of what's behind door number 2 or 3 or 4 or however many total doors are out there for him to walk through if he chooses to do it.
Well, and you know, to more of what you're saying, yes. I mean, you know, you mentioned you know, okay, yeah, teams are going to come visit him. All right, great. Yes, if that does happen, I think at some point to what you're saying, he's going to go visit he's going to go to that facility and check it out, I think, before he signs there. But, like, here's another thing. Like, tell me right now, like, legitimately, all right, Mike, I know we know people in the NFL, everything like that. Who do we think is really interested in Brady right now? Like, who do we think that the market is? Like, what are the teams we're talking about? We're talking about who? The Tennessee Titans, the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Chargers, who have kind of hiding in the weeds right now and not making any, comments. And then who else?
Not to be confused with hiding in the weeds.
Hiding in the weeds, right? With. Yes, right.
The Raiders. The Raiders.
Okay. Right. And then are we talking about anybody else? That legitimately.
Well, back to the point that I was making earlier about which teams have the luxury of time.
Right.
The ability to go through this dance. Right. The Raiders are at the top of the list.
Yes.
Because they've got Derek Carr, and it's already out of the bag that they're interested in Tom Brady. It's not like having Brady go to Las Vegas or going to see Tom Brady is going to make Derek Carr any more upset. He already knows. So the Raiders are best suited. followed closely by the Chargers because they've got Tyrod Taylor, although I think deep down they'd like to upgrade over Tyrod Taylor, especially going into that new stadium.
Right.
But the 49ers have the luxury of time as well. Now, they may not want to upset the psyche of Jimmy Garoppolo by courting Tom Brady before deciding to stay with Jimmy Garoppolo, but they have until April 1. That's when Jimmy Garoppolo has $15.7 million in salary become fully guaranteed. And the 49ers have always built that into their veteran contracts. And one of the reasons you put it there is to use it, right? At some point, you're going to use it.
Yeah.
And this is a year that they could use it. And, I think that if it ever gets to the point where Tom Brady is visiting the 49ers, I think it's already done, right?
Yeah.
If it ever gets that far, everybody knows that we can't stop now.
Can't turn back, right.
And the fact that he was a 49ers fan growing up would allow him to avoid that feeling of what have I done, because he's pulling in every day to the facility where the 49ers are. He's going to be happy with that. He's going to make it work. But these other teams, well, and the 49ers are in that bucket too with the Chargers and the Raiders. They can afford to wait and see what Tom wants to do. The Titans are going to have to figure out what the hell they're going to do. They got Ryan Tannehill.
Right.
And if you let Tannehill go and you go after Tom Brady and you'll get him, who's your quarterback going to be? Marcus Mariota? And the same thing for the Buccaneers. If they go after Tom Brady and they don't get him and Jameis Winston's gone, who's their quarterback going to be? So, we're operating under the assumption that this game of musical chairs is going to result with more butts than seats. There's still a chance that there are going to be teams at the end of the day that are settling for somebody a tier or two lower than what they could have had if they had moved more quickly.
Yeah, well, yes, there's no doubt about that. But, then to like the Raiders and the Chargers point, again, is Tom Brady really going to want to go there? That's where I go to. I don't think this decision or move is about money. I think it's legacy. I think if he goes anywhere, he's going to go to somewhere where he thinks it gives them a chance to go win one more Super Bowl and say, I can win without Bill Belichick. I don't need him. And the Raiders, that's not happening right now. It's not happening this year. Maybe 2 years. Is Brady willing to go somewhere and go I'll be part of a rebuild for a year, and then that second year when I'm 44, we can do it and go on the Super Bowl run? I don't think so. The Chargers, is he willing to do that there? I don't know. I don't know either. And also with those two teams, the Chargers and the Raiders, I just have a hard time believing just at face value he's going to pick either one of them. Why? Because number 15 in red and yellow is in that division, and he's going to go, screw that. I got to deal with him. I'm not going to the AFC West, so I almost want to cancel those two teams out. And that's where it goes back to the 49er thing. When I hear you and Peter King and Deion Sanders, who's been beating that drum, it just makes me think one of you guys knows something. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, I
don't know anything.
No, but
I don't know anything. I never know anything. Life's easier that way.
But I just find the 49er Brady conversation interesting there. I mean, gosh, if that happens, what goes on? Does New England, I saw Deion Sanders say yesterday, does New England call the 49ers and say, we'll take Jimmy Garoppolo back? I mean, that would be the greatest,
Makes sense.
It makes sense.
Makes
a
lot of sense.
It does.
Trade him right back.
But
all right, we got to take a break.
Yeah, fine. Take a break.
But before we go, I rarely read from anything I've written at ProFootballTalk.com, but I think this encapsulates exactly where this is, and then we'll move on. Does Tom Brady want maximum money? He never has.
Right.
Does he want to win? He always has. Brady consistently says his favorite ring is the next one, and above all else, he'd be looking for the place where he can get one more or maybe more before Father Time finally tells him it's time.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.